On August 19, 1942, within the thick jungle close to Taiview Point on Guadalcanal, 2nd Lieutenant Genjiro Imi of the 8th Independent Anti-Tank Gun Company made notes in his diary, expressing the sense of shock felt by many Japanese troops as they faced American adversaries. Amid palm canopies and choking vines, Imi and 916 fellow soldiers of Colonel Kona Ichiki's unit had just disembarked from destroyers, finishing a nighttime landing that Japanese commanders envisioned as the opening move to retake Henderson Field. They were informed that the Americans likely totaled only around 2,000 men, undertrained, easily intimidated, and unprepared due to pampered backgrounds. Colonel Ichiki himself rejected alerts to await more troops for support. He told his officers, "These are Americans. We will push them into the ocean before dawn." None of these combat-seasoned veterans of the Chinese and Southeast Asian campaigns anticipated that they would soon meet something entirely new in the records of the Imperial Japanese Army. Not just simple defeat, which was inconceivable for fighters accustomed exclusively to victories since 1937, but the absolute destruction of all tactical beliefs, every strategy, and every ideological foundation that shaped the Japanese approach to warfare. The jungle was about to serve as an American asset. The night, which the Japanese had dominated since the beginning of hostilities, would turn against them, and overwhelming American advantages in firepower, organization, and raw destructive force would smash the legend of Japanese supremacy in hand-to-hand engagements. This shift had started 2 weeks before, on August 7, when 11,000 Marines from the 1st Marine Division landed at Lunga Point. General Alexander Vandegrift's Marines were carrying out Operation Watchtower, which was the first major American attack of the Pacific Theater. Their task appeared simple when written down: capture the almost finished Japanese airstrip, set up defensive lines, and maintain their hold until additional forces arrived. The truth was that they were stepping into what would become the lengthiest and most punishing fight in Marine Corps records by that time, all within an environment that would press their limits of endurance. The landscape itself was a nightmare of tropical privation. Guadalcanal measured 90 miles long by 25 miles wide, with mountainous terrain rising 8,000 feet and shrouded in endless clouds. The coastal lowland, where Henderson Field had been situated, was a tangle of Kenai grass, swamps, and jungle so dense men could see only a few feet ahead. Temperatures were stifling and the humidity hovered above 90% constantly. Mosquitoes gathered so thickly that Marines sometimes breathed them in. Rivers and streams, which appeared clean and safe from the air, were actually infested with disease and parasites. Malaria, dengue, dysentery, and tropical sores would end up putting more American soldiers out of action than actual enemy contact. Yet, on that first morning, the Marines encountered almost no opposition at the airfield. The 2,200 Japanese workers and 600 sailors retreated into the forest, leaving behind their gear, food stocks, and, most importantly, the vital airstrip. As the evening of August 8 arrived, U.S. engineers had already started making improvements to the landing strip. They later christened it Henderson Field, named for Major Lofton Henderson, the Marine pilot who died at Midway. In a matter of days, the first planes would touch down there and the location would be forever known as the base of the Cactus Air Force in military history. The Japanese reaction was immediate and devastating for U.S. naval forces. On the night of August 9, Vice Admiral Gonichi Mikawa commanded 7 cruisers and a single destroyer in a masterful surprise assault under cover of darkness. The engagement at Savo Island marked the most severe loss in United States Navy history. 4 heavy cruisers USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, USS Astoria, and HMS Canberra were sunk within 60 minutes. Over 1,000 sailors perished in the burning sea. The remaining Allied ships retreated, removing most of the cargo that had not yet been offloaded. The Marines found themselves isolated, cut off and facing an enemy reinforced, with only about half of their gear and rations. What the Japanese senior leadership did not realize in those first days of August was that Henderson Field had become the central objective. Possession of the airstrip ensured superiority over the nearby waters during daylight. Aircraft flying from Henderson were able to attack any Japanese vessel within 200 miles. This crucial detail determined the course of the entire campaign. The Japanese dominated nighttime, ferrying troops and materiel on high-speed destroyers in missions later termed the Tokyo Express. However, at sunrise, American air forces controlled the airspace. The situation required that Japan capture Henderson Field at once, before American units could build stronger defenses. The Imperial General Headquarters assigned the mission to Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake's 17th Army located at Rabaul. Hyakutake had only small forces to use. Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi's 35th Infantry Brigade was stationed at Palau. The 4th Infantry Regiment was in the Philippines. The closest available formation was Colonel Ichiki's 28th Infantry Regiment, which had previously been near Guam. The regiment had been slated for the Midway Campaign, which had been scrapped following the naval catastrophe of June. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki, an instructor at the infantry school, was recognized as a highly capable tactician. He also possessed a reputation for impulsiveness and unwavering faith in Japanese morale triumphing over American materiel. Before his departure from Truk to Guadalcanal, Ichiki received unambiguous instructions to wait for the rest of his regiment prior to retaking the airstrip. Nonetheless, Ichiki held little regard for the abilities of American troops. He had reviewed accounts from China, the Philippines, and every place Japanese troops had met Western soldiers. They were undisciplined. They cracked under stress. They were unable to rival Japanese fighters in hand-to-hand combat. On August 18 at night, 6 destroyers landed 917 men from Ichiki's vanguard at Teivu Point, 15 miles east of U.S. positions. The landing was executed smoothly and went unnoticed by American forces. Ichiki at once dispatched scouting parties to determine enemy presence and locations of defensive works. This standard tactical action would ultimately be disastrous. On August 19, a patrol from Company A, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, under Captain Charles Brush, advanced along the coastal path moving towards Coley Point and spotted Japanese soldiers. The opposing forces clashed in a short and brutal skirmish. The Marines killed 31 Japanese and took documents that signaled a sizable enemy force close by. Even more consequentially, the seized materials revealed that the Japanese had grossly misjudged American strength. Captain Brush hurried back to friendly lines with his intelligence. General Vandegrift perceived instantly what was ahead. A Japanese assault was imminent, likely from the east. He instructed Colonel Clifton Cates to reinforce the defenses atop the sandbank at the mouth of what the Marines dubbed the Tenaru River. The waterway was actually the Ilu River, yet the misnaming persisted in every later record. Cates placed Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Creswell's 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines along the river's edge, positioning machine guns to establish overlapping lines of fire across the sandbar. What came next proved to be among the most lopsided clashes in U.S. Marine history. Instead of waiting for reports from his missing reconnaissance team or for additional troops, Colonel Ichiki chose to strike without delay. Between the night of August 20 and early hours of August 21, he ordered his men to launch a direct assault over the sandbar. Japanese battle doctrine stressed the power of spirit and bold nighttime charges to defeat enemy gunfire. Ichiki was certain his experienced men would punch through the American lines by sheer nerve and hand-to-hand combat, where Japanese troops excelled with grenades and bayonets. Shortly after midnight, a Solomon Island scout named Jacob Bouza, having escaped from Japanese captors following hours of torture, staggered into Marine lines to deliver a warning. The Japanese forces were on their way. Mere minutes later, the assault commenced. Hundreds of Japanese troops stormed over the sandbar, yelling war shouts, discharging rifles, and tossing grenades. They charged straight into a deadly zone that the Marines had meticulously set up. The M1917A1 Browning water-cooled machine guns began firing. These guns, refined in World War I, became the unrecognized backbone of Marine fire support. Each of these could fire 600 rounds per minute endlessly, provided the water jacket remained full. The Marines carefully arranged the guns to cover one another, ensuring all parts of the sandbar were within their line of fire. Waves of Japanese soldiers collapsed as the heavy .30 caliber bullets ripped through their bodies. Survivors who crossed the sandbar then faced 37mm anti-tank guns loaded with canister rounds, oversized shotgun blasts capable of reducing men to fragments. The fighting persisted for hours. Again and again, Japanese troops advanced into the machine gun barrage. A few succeeded in reaching Marine positions, resulting in brutal hand-to-hand clashes. Marines used rifles, knives, fists, and any weapon available. However, the defenses remained intact. The overlapping gunfire prevented any Japanese from breaching the lines. As morning neared, Colonel Ichiki's offensive had completely ground to a halt. Over 800 of his soldiers were either dead or dying on the sandbar and in the shallow surf. Morning light brought no respite for the remaining Japanese. General Vandergrift commanded a counteroffensive using units from the 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. 5 M3 Stuart light tanks rolled across the sandbar and methodically hunted Japanese soldiers hiding in the coconut groves. War correspondent Richard Trigascus, observing from a Marine post, described what he saw. He found it remarkable to watch them weaving between the trees, swiveling, changing direction, expelling streams of yellow fire. They had not appreciated there were so many Japanese concealed in the grove. Group after group were rooted out and eliminated by tank-fired canister shells. By the middle of August 21st, the battle for the Tenaru had ended. Out of the 917 Japanese troops who came ashore at Tyu Point, about 800 were killed. Roughly 128 survivors, largely support personnel who had stayed near the shore, slipped away into the forest. They transmitted a radio message to 17th Army headquarters conveying the calamity. Included among the deceased was Colonel Ichiki himself, although reports vary regarding the manner of his death. According to the official Japanese account, he destroyed his regimental standard by fire and performed ritual suicide. Certain eyewitnesses claimed, however, that he perished while leading one last assault. The Marines suffered about 40 men either killed or wounded. The psychological toll on the Japanese soldiers who survived was immense. Seized documents and recollections from after the war disclosed how stunned many were to realize a whole regiment had been wiped out in a single night. The American forces had not responded as Japanese military theory expected them to. When attacked at night, they did not lose composure. Nor did they retreat when confronted by attacks from shouting Japanese soldiers. Rather, they held their positions, let the Japanese troops enter areas pre-arranged for ambush, and methodically eliminated them using focused firepower. The most shattering discovery came from reviewing captured gear and analyzing the scene of battle. The Americans had a degree of logistical abundance that Japanese intelligence never anticipated. Browning machine guns in American hands never stopped firing, did not overheat beyond their specifications, and always functioned thanks to diligent care and enough spare components. Each Marine seemed to have more ammunition than a Japanese squad could carry collectively. The artillery firepower available to the Marines surpassed all that the Japanese could bring to the fight. The effectiveness of infantry, artillery, and coordinated naval gunfire from offshore ships demonstrated a unified system of destruction unfamiliar to Japanese troops. In the days following the disaster at Tenaru, additional Japanese units were already being sent toward Guadalcanal. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto set in motion a large-scale naval campaign designed to bolster the following bid to reclaim Henderson Field. 3 slow-moving transport ships left Truk on August 16, bringing the last 1,400 men from Ichiki's regiment along with 500 naval marines. Once the sea battle of the Eastern Solomons caused severe harm to one of these ships, the Japanese High Command resolved to forego using slow transports altogether. Instead, they decided to employ destroyers for what would later be called Tokyo Express supply runs. From August 29 through September 4, a number of destroyers and light cruisers managed to deliver nearly 5,000 soldiers from Major General Kawaguchi's 35th Infantry Brigade to Taivyu Point. The Tokyo Express quickly proved highly effective for transferring troops. Destroyers were able to make round trips from Shortland Islands to Guadalcanal during a single night, limiting vulnerability to attacks by American aircraft. Nonetheless, the strategy had a major flaw. Large pieces of equipment could not travel this way. Artillery, armored vehicles, trucks, and most critically, enough rations and munitions all had to be abandoned. This supply problem was destined to undermine every Japanese attack on Guadalcanal. Arriving troops had little besides what they carried personally. Their survival depended on scavenging locally and bringing in whatever provisions could slip through American positions. With the campaign progressing, Japanese soldiers increasingly found themselves contending not only with American weaponry but also with hunger. General Kawaguchi selected September 12 as the impending date for his operation to seize Henderson Field. His plan involved a three-pronged assault. One detachment would move up from the west along the coast. Another contingent would attack from the south, cutting through dense jungle with the aim of hitting what Japanese intelligence assessed as the weakest sector of American lines.